What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find more content episodes at dsmsports.net. And, of course, follow along with the podcast, subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. What a phenomenal show we have in store today. You're going to love it. You're going to learn a lot. Here's some great insights, great stories. My guest on the podcast today is Perry Mattern. He is social media manager for the New York Jets, Jets. Just full of good insight. I really enjoyed talking to him, so stick around for that interview. But first, this episode's helpful tool. This episode's helpful tool is a photo editing app. I feel like we're bouncing around oftentimes, at least I am, among many apps trying to find all the different things I might need, whether it's removing something, changing a background, certainly adding filters, adding stickers or even custom stickers, doing video editing, and this one is pretty good. It claims to be that all-in-one app, and it has a pretty solid ground for that. It's called PicsArt. You probably have seen it. Maybe you have. It's been around for a while now. Very highly rated, and it's literally how it sounds, P-I-C-S art, PicsArt. You can find it in the App Store. And again, as I mentioned, it has all that ability to remove things, blur the background, animate a little bit. You can bring in some of your custom stuff. It has filters. Obviously, some of them are freemium. It is a freemium app, so there are some pro features that you need to have access to. But there's a lot there for free. You can download it pretty easily. And again, it's got a lot of pretty cool features. So instead of listing them all off, just check it out, play around with it. You might find some good things that can help streamline what you're already doing if you're not already using other apps that you prefer. But again, always on the lookout for what apps are kind of trending, that are on the way up, that are providing something that maybe other apps aren't providing, or at least can make it easier and quicker to get that content out. And to even make the ordinary a little bit extraordinary by adding just a little more panache to that in-game photo or whatever it might be. So check it out. Again, the PicsArt app, PicsArt, PicsArt app. But more importantly, stick around because you're going to love this interview with Perry Mattern of the New York Jets. Back on the podcast with today's guest, and I am so excited for this conversation. I can tell this is going to be awesome. Can't wait to pick his brain. Today's guest on the podcast is Perry Mattern. He is the social media manager for the New York Jets. Welcome to the podcast today, Perry.
Thanks, Neil. I appreciate it. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Looking forward to learning from you. You have great experience. Great work you put out there that I've been following for a while now, and we're going to enjoy picking your brain a little bit and dissecting all of it. But first, let's hear about you. Tell us about your career path, how you, all the various stops along the way, and how you got to where you are today, and any tips for folks that want to do what you do.
Yeah, sure. It's certainly a little maybe non-traditional for the role that I ended up in. So I went to a relatively small school in Pennsylvania called Shippensburg University. I was from about an hour from there, from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I went to school wanting to be a sports writer. So I went there, wanted to be a sports writer. I wrote for the university newspaper. I wrote for a local newspaper that covered like high school sports. I go out on Friday nights and I cover high school football games, high school basketball games, things of that nature. And then my dad was actually a play-by-play broadcaster for the Nationals AA affiliate in Harrisburg. That's Washington's AA affiliate. Wow. And so I kind of always had like broadcasting like in me, and like I always was interested in it, but like I kind of did the writing thing first, and then I got really into broadcasting when later in my time at Shippensburg, and then with the connection that my dad wasn't there anymore in Harrisburg, but I went back and kind of had connections there to do an internship, and I ended up being the number 2 on the radio for the Senators for 3 seasons, and wow. I loved it. Like that was like. It's still kind of like, that's like you kind of have those dreams, like you keep in the back of your mind, I would like love to be a Major League Baseball, like play-by-play guy. Like that's like truly like the dream, but like I kind of in my third season.
Perry, before you go on from that, I have to know, like, did you have like a nice catchphrase or a line, or what you say when a home run was hit? Anything special like that?
That's really good. You're right on it. Cause my dad, his home run call was, "Is it gone? Goodbye." So when you saw like it, you would kind of see it go over the fence. You're like, "Is it gone? Goodbye." And so I took that from him. So that was my home run call as well.
I love it. That's awesome. Awesome.
I should go back and find it. The one thing I definitely copied when I was a radio broadcaster too, when I was younger, was doing basketball. Was Mike Breen's bang. Like everyone, I'm sure
Hell
there's
yeah.
millions of people who copied that as well. But I loved it. And my third season there, I think one thing people probably know about like baseball broadcasters in general is like it's pretty tough. That's a pretty tough
Grind.
fraternity to crack, and it is a grind. And like getting to the big leagues is not easy because people get those jobs and they pretty much are going to hold that seat until they retire. So I said, look, I want to work at the highest level. I don't really care if it's football, baseball, basketball, hockey, whatever. I want to work at the highest level, so I got to find a way to get there. And so I ended up, leaning back on my writing experience and got an internship with the Washington the Washington, I guess, Commanders now. And I was there for a semester, and then was offered a full-time job after that. And I just kind of got there and tried to fill as many hats as I could. I was writing, but I was interviewing guys, doing some on camera stuff, and there's been a lot that has been made of that place, and a lot of that is pretty true. And so it was not the greatest work environment, but I loved the people that I worked with. Maybe not the people that I worked for, but the people I worked with, and it was kind of cool because I was able to get my hands on so many different things because we were so collaborative, because we were understaffed and under resourced and all those kinds of things. So when our social manager left in 2018, I said, we kind of needed someone to just do it until we hired somebody else. And I said, I'll do it. Like I worked really closely with him, and like, I feel like I kind of have a good idea of, what to do. And I, held it down across training camp, and then, we hired someone, but I ended up working hand in hand with that person. And, at the end of the 2018 season, I said, this is not, outside of the work itself, this is not a very good work environment. This is not a very good place to be. And so I said, let's pick this up and go somewhere else. Like, I think I really like this social thing. Like I've always had a passion for it, but maybe never like actually, dove into it head first. And so I said, I saw the New York Jets had something available. It was kind of at my level, and I went and got it. And so did my first 2 seasons here as a coordinator, and then my boss left, ironically, to go back to Washington, where I think have improved a lot culturally there. So it was cool to kind of get my first year as running the show, and hired a couple people to my team, and it was a lot of fun, and we've made a lot of great strides, and I'm really proud of what we've done. But it's I'd say with my story, like, I'm not really sure there's a bunch of tips out there, but like from it, but maybe, it's funny because like, to me, like social's still so new in a way, right? Like, still, this is only like something that's like 12 years old, right? 12, 15 years old. And like, as a job, like maybe 12 years max, right? Like, so there's still a lot of ways to find your way into it, whether that is through like my path, which is maybe much more of a media trained path or a writing path. And, I know there's a lot of ways into it from a marketing path, right? I didn't take any marketing classes in college, but I can tell now that it would have been really helpful to have something like that in my back pocket when I was coming up. So, there's a lot of ways to get there, but I think that, there's a little, the writing definitely has helped me a lot. Like, that's kind of my calling card is copywriting, and being able to, see what is good stuff, and not copy it, but maybe just put it into your toolbox and just kind of make that toolbox bigger and bigger and bigger.
So many good points there. I mean, even that last point around the ability you had to write, and like, people don't think about how much writing goes into effective social media. That writing copy is such an essential part of the job across platforms. And then the greater, of course, value of just storytelling in general, and being able to extract those stories and figure out how to articulate them best. But totally, man, like, being like, it's hard to learn that expert level of writing skills overnight, but to have that in your back pocket as a starting point, I'm sure certainly helped along the way.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's weird because like, the writing styles are so different at the same time too. And I kind of find myself now, if I have to actually write something that's like extensive, like, maybe like even like 100-word email, I find myself like struggling to put like actual sentences together, because now the social brain has been trained so much to speak relaxed or like relatable, like to social itself, right? Like you can't write your emails like you write your tweets. but like I find myself doing that all the time. And then also I find myself like reading books or reading articles, like, reading for like a minute or two and then being like, wow, I really have already lost focus here. And it's something I'm like kind of working on, because I'd like to get back to, I used to love like reading more, and now I find myself instead like just kind of consuming content in different ways, whether that's, TikTok or Instagram, things of that nature. So it's cool. Like it's the one thing that I love about this job that I don't think, like, I mean, you could have gotten it somewhere else, but like, man, no day is ever the same. That's for sure. And like, no year is ever the same either. Like looking back now that I've actually done this for 3 years, and this be, my full-time job for 3 years, it's like, it's just crazy to see how the landscape has changed in that short of time. So it's certainly, daunting, but at the same time, really exciting.
Very much a no day is ever the same. You can never know what you're going to wake up and find out. As you and I were just joking about offline, that today could have been a really, really crazy day for you all with Jets. We'll leave the listeners guessing as to what we were talking about and leave a little a cryptic message there. But I think that there's a lot of themes that do come up with talking to folks on this podcast, and one of which you, like, all of which you certainly demonstrate, but one that stood out, of course, is the fact that you were willing and able to get your hands dirty and say, like, how can I help? How can I help here? How can I help here? And that certainly meant going beyond maybe what you were hired to do initially, or what you thought you were going for, especially when you were trying to come up in that sort of sports journalism path, that sports writing path, that broadcasting path. So, like, how did you go about like picking up all these skills? Because social media really is such a multifaceted department, role, et cetera, that involves project management, copywriting, design and creative, writing briefs, analytics. So, like, did you just have the basic level skills of creative and storytelling, and then pick up the rest as you went? Or did you set about and say, hey, if I want to be the best at this job, if I want to be good at this job, I need to learn X, Y, and Z to really excel at it?
Yeah, it's almost like what you don't know, you don't know. So like it was like kind of a mix of an answer to both of those questions, because, or like both of the options of the answers to the questions, because once I kind of learned what I did need to know, then yes, I attacked learning how to learn those things, right? Like I had no analytical background. Now I kind of was an analytical person because I really liked like baseball stats growing up, but like, at the same time, like actually learning social statistics, and then learning like, what are the KPIs that are, kind of are instructive or are indicative, I should say, of success, right? And what we should actually be looking at. And that just comes from just reading and listening to people that are smarter than me. Like that's really, I think, the best way to, just to go about a lot of this, is just being incredibly curious. And there's a lot of people along the way that were really helpful with that too, right? Like I mentioned the social manager in Washington, his name was Brian. Like Brian moved on to Nestle and does great things there. But like there's so much that you just kind of learned about the management side of things, right? And some of those things were in a crash course in 2 weeks when he was leaving, but just learning the back end of things and managing and see how he managed things. And then you move on to the Jets, and I worked with Kevin Klein, who's now back in Washington, and he taught me so much of a little bit more of that management skills, but then also the managing those relationships throughout the organization as being the social contact, right? Like working with the sponsorship department on our partner content, and working with our creative team on what we need to, have on a daily basis and a weekly basis, and planning for all of those tentpole events that come through the NFL calendar. And then, like I said, reading and listening and following people that are smarter than me, that do this really well. Just constantly being open to learning more about, what can make you better as an individual, and then how you can, help your team. I think I'm a very collaborative person in nature, and, it's just always trying to find a way to make our stuff as good as it possibly can be, and then just building on top of that each year after each year. But somewhat back to your original question. I think it's just a matter of figuring out what you actually need to learn about, and then going and attacking it. Well, I had the storytelling side of things already kind of ingrained in my brain, and then I had to go find out the rest.
And I mentioned earlier that I think you're a really self-aware person. I think that helps a lot, of knowing where you excel, where you need to do work, and where you're at in your career, even, and how you're helping the organization. So I want to like talk a little bit, because it seems like this was meaningful to you. was as you moved into that manager role, when you did get that crash course, and then all of a sudden the reins were sort of handed to you in some ways. Like, what did you find that difference was when you went from wherever it might have been, a coordinator, specialist, whatever the title you want to call it, that was more probably hands dirty all the time and creating content or using your phone to shoot video, shoot photo, and you may still do some of that as a social manager. But like, what roles, like, how did your day change? How did your daily tasks change? Are you spending more time on planning and preparation and data analysis and connecting with sponsorships, or like tell about how your workflow and work days sort of changed going from one position sort of moving up the chain a little bit.
Yeah, I think you think like going into that in an ideal world, yeah, your hands aren't going to be as dirty and you're going to spend a lot of time strategizing and planning to make the best content possible. And certainly that exists. But there are, and you listed off a lot of those things already, but there are a lot of things that you're doing on a daily basis that you find yourself looking at the clock and it's 3:30 and it's like, I didn't really actually think about what we can do from a specific post by post perspective. And my team, Kylie and Melissa, the two women on my team, have done a great job, and they've grown so much. They're really young, only about a year into this, so it kind of depends on what your team is too, right? So like a lot of this first year as a manager has been helping them develop to the best that they can be too, because I think really you're nothing without your help, and if I don't spend time making them the best that they can be, it's a disservice to not just myself but to them. And so that's been a lot of it. But as now we are at a point where they are fully antiquated to what we're doing, that they're able to handle all of their tasks themselves. And this off season has been really kind of a joy for me, because this is the first off season where we're not hiring somebody to the team, right? Where everyone's kind of in their spots and they know what they're doing. And it has given me more time to do a lot of that strategy and planning. And we do a lot of this based around the tentpole kinds of things, like, okay, what are we going to do for the combine? How are we going to attack the combine? Not just from a social perspective. Well, what we are going to do from a social perspective, and what we can do from just our 3-person social team. But then let's go talk to the other members of the content department that goes 15 deep. How can they help? And what are their goals that they're trying to achieve? And it's the combine, then it's free agency, then it's the draft. And, I think everyone knows that calendar. So, but there is still just, that when it comes to the reporting, the data reporting and working with our business analytics team, and then the sponsorship aspect, they're doing recaps, right? And they're going out to market now to try to sell for the 2022 year. And, we have to be sharp. If we're not sharp with making sure that all of our end, we're holding up our end of the bargain, they're not going to be very happy with us. And there's just, there's little things that come up each day. And I know you already kind of dropped the hint on one of them, where you're going to have to drop everything you're doing and go try to prepare for this instead. But it's amazing. I never consider myself a very organized person. Growing up, I'm 29 now, and I feel like I'm finally actually getting to a place where I'm, semi-organized. And man, that is to have at least 1 or 2 organized people on your social team is so important. And because the preparing for the unprepared is what it's all about, especially when it comes to social and sports. And I find that to be, what I have tasked myself with is preparing us 3 for the preparing for the unprepared. And, the more that we can have in the can already, idea wise, execution wise, it just makes us even more nimble when things come out of nowhere.
I love it. There's so many directions I want to go, Perry. But let's jump on that last point really quickly about the need to be prepared, the need to be able to react on a dime, to turn on a dime, whatever phrase you want to use. Like, how can you sort of be prepared for the unexpected, or be prepared to be ready? Like, are you guys creating almost like skeleton plans or skeleton content, even of saying, okay, if this kind of thing goes down, trade, injury, whatever, a major game, historical milestone, or whatever it might be, like put this plan into action, or like what are those steps you can take to make sure that everyone kind of knows what to do, man their battle stations if something big does go down that catches you off guard a little bit?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts of the job, because it's just certainly, if something exciting is happening, it's, naturally exciting. But I think it's, you kind of have preparation for things that are going to happen. And that I think allows you to like, and I think this goes back to my point of being organized. Like, I think people just think better when they aren't scrambled, right? I mean, I know that's a pretty obvious statement, but like, when a Sunday starts or night one of the draft starts, like things are going to fly.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not ready, then it's going to be really tough. Now, I know all 31 of my counterparts, social teams in the NFL, are ready for every night. Now, what I want to do is be ready on top of that for what happens if we trade up, what happens if we trade back,
Right.
what happens if we trade for a player, and all 31 other teams, all 32 teams are going to have their graphics ready. They're going to be ready to, but when you are truly comfortable and confident in your plan, I feel like your brain is much more open to things that can happen. So I'll give actually a good example is the draft for us last year. And we were really, really prepared for the draft. And, we picked 2. And part of the reason that we were probably really prepared was because we picked number 2 and we knew it was Zach. So
Right.
like we didn't have to worry about creating 16 graphics for 16 different possibilities. We knew, Jags were going to pick Trevor and we were going to pick Zach.
Mm-hmm.
So when the clock opened, or when the draft, like 5 minutes before the draft opened, we were just kind of actually relaxing. And I said, what if we just said, well, as soon as the draft opened, we just tweeted, all right, at Jaguars, hurry up. And I ran it to my boss and he was like, yeah, I don't have, why would I have a problem with that? I was like, all right, we'll do it. As soon as the draft opens and the Jags are on the clock, we'll tweet it. And it was like our 3rd most liked tweet last year, something like that. It had like 22,000 likes or something like that. And then the other one would be a little bit later in the draft. We had actually already had a meme prepped, and it was oh my gosh, what's the character's name from The Wire? Oh man, I can't. I'm probably going to think of his name as I'm telling the story, but he has the meme that says, "I want you to put word back out put word out there that we're back up." And because we had a second first rounder, so I was like, yeah, we'll tweet that when we're back up, because literally we are back up.
Yeah.
And our pick was 23, and but instead we ended up trading up to 14. I was like, oh my gosh, the wire meme, we got to tweet it. And it was great. Like people went nuts for it. And Stringer Bell is the character's name. So I finally thought of it. But we had just kind of had that ready, and it was like, it worked out super well. And it was funny because the timing was actually pretty amazing, because around that time we had kind of finally finished all of the Zach stuff from picking at number 2, and everyone had like just taken their first breath, and then we looked up at the TV and we're like, wait, we're on the clock right now? What is going on? And then it was a mad rush again. So like it's a matter of being prepared. And we didn't we knew we were going to have a second first round pick, but we didn't know we were going to trade up, and so that stuff materializes really quickly, and you just kind of have to be ready. So I'm a big believer on that stuff.
Yeah, all of a sudden you get into the 2-minute offense, and you got to be ready to go.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
I think it's everyone kind of knows and accepts and enjoys the fact the NFL is a year-round league at this point, with tentpole events being very much a part of the picture, and the NFL is doing a job of creating more tentpole events, whether that's combine, draft, free agency, schedule release, et cetera, et cetera. So as you guys head into that kind of environment, like, hey, the draft is coming, or whatever, schedule release is coming, how do you look at what ultimately comprises a successful strategy, successful outcome for you guys on the social media side? Like I think even just thinking through your draft example of having that meme ready, saying, hey, we're going to use a meme, and this is going to help us kind of relay our brand a little bit on a day we have more attention to more attention of our fans than we usually do. Are you thinking about, hey, let's maximize our sponsor exposure and monetization, let's maximize our data capture opportunities, our follower growth, our engagement, our video views? Like, what are you thinking about as you're building that strategy and collaborating within everyone else in your team?
I think first things first, we're thinking about engagement pretty much at all times, because if engagement still is going to solve so many other issues, or if engagement's high, then that most likely is going to lead to the other things kind of taking care of themselves. I'm a little bit of a believer now, and certainly there's a lot of evidence to back it up when we talk about follower growth. I think, TikTok perhaps is off to the side. I think, it's been proven that winning isn't going to necessarily correlate with you on TikTok. We've seen that the Detroit Lions, for example, are one of the most followed TikTok teams in the league. And, they have the number 2 overall pick this year. So that team's done an incredible job on TikTok. And, but then someone like, you see what the Bengals have done, they've done a great job, given certainly a lot to work with, but they were ready too. And there's a lot of correlation with winning and stuff, but you got to be ready. We talk about it all the time. We're ready to win here. We know our content team is ready to win. There's no doubt about it. So I think we when we prepare for all these tentpole events, we look back and say, when we get ready for the draft this year, and we've already started doing this, is look at, okay, what worked last year, what worked in 2020, what worked in 2019. Those are the 3 years that I've been here. And also that's kind of the analytic providers have gotten better and better over that time. So it's easier to go back to, we'll use, I'm a big fan of CrowdTangle's interface when it comes to that kind of thing. You can look at what the overperforming posts were in that time, not just for yourself, but around the league and stuff. So, using that stuff and saying, okay, all right, here's the stuff that we know works, right? We already have in place that is going to work. This is our bread and butter. Obviously, you're going to have to post a graphic for whoever we draft, right? But what are the other things that would work for all of these different situations? And this year, we've actually been talking about it. We picked number 4. We picked 4 and 10. And, last year we knew we were picking Zach, and the year before we knew we were probably taking an offensive lineman. And the year before that, it felt like it was going to be Quinnen almost no matter what. So this is the first year where we really have no clue who we're going to pick. So we're going to have to talk about a lot of different people at 4 and say, all right, if this guy's the pick, what will we do with him? Is this guy's the pick? Is there something fun internet culture wise we can do with him? Things we need to know about, their history and things of that nature. So it's just thinking about that's what's really cool about it. And I've thought about this a lot now, where it's funny. This is really the first off season, and this is my 5th season in the league, and my 3rd and a half, I guess, doing social only, that I feel actually comfortable, because now you've actually been through it 3 different times, and one of those times being completely virtual. And you feel like you really are comfortable with kind of knowing what the bread and butter is innately. And then you get all that stuff out of the way. And then you just start working on, okay, what's the stuff that takes us to another level? What's the stuff that sets us apart when we have eyes on ourselves on these big nights? Like you were saying, how do we set ourselves apart in those spaces without abandoning who we are? And that's, I feel pretty blessed here to have a pretty willing, staff that is on my team, but then also the people that I report up to as well, pretty open to us, having fun and really developing a voice that is both relatable. I feel weird saying on trend, but on trend and we'll cut through the noise a little bit and cut through what the normal things you would see from these teams at these tentpole events.
Yeah. And when you have those moments, then are you and it's probably a little more reactive than anything else and just trying to maximize engagement, whatever that might mean at the time. But there's ways you can go about it. There's hey, do we want to focus on what this player, to use the drafting example, what this player means to us from X and O's perspective, and why it means the Jets are more likely to win games and you should be excited, versus, hey, let's lean on this player's backstory and get the fans to fall in love with the individual, with the player, with Quinnen Williams saying "God bless you" to himself or whatever. Or there's also the element of maybe, hey, let's make sure that we convey the brand that we want to get out there, our voice, the types of memes we use, how we talk about ourselves and about players. Are all those elements kind of, and other ones as well, kind of bouncing around in your head as you guys execute both extemporaneously and in real time? Or is there really some elements that tend to resonate best with fans in those moments?
I think the one thing that we have kind of continually come back to, and more recently have talked about this more, is the idea of entertaining instead of informing. Mm-hmm. And I think, there's sometimes that we are going to inform just naturally, we're going to tell you who we picked in the draft, right? But, when we talk about what does this mean for our team, and we're going to talk, if it's an edge rusher, we're going to talk about this guy's like we're gonna get excited about it, but we're also not going to sit here and tweet that he won on like 43% of his pass rush snaps a year ago. I think the one thing that I've come to know a little bit is, especially in the New York, the New York market is actually a little bit more. It's a little more prevalent here than maybe smaller markets, is that we have a large press contingent, right? Like you can go get your information about the team in a lot of different places. The Athletic, the New York Post, the New York Daily News, the NJ Media. Like if you want information like breakdowns and like legit opinions about the team that, is not like one-sided, like obviously we're going to be a little bit biased. So they're going to go get their information out there. Like if they want their information, they can go over there. If you want to be entertained and see the draft call and see the guy visiting the facility for the first time and like meeting, our coach and Joe Douglas, like you're going to come to us and we're going to entertain you with this cool stuff of, this guy being mic'd up, like for his first time being in the building and things of that nature. And, him, with Zach last year, when Zach got picked, we found a video that we wanted to stitch. We actually put a call out to like people on TikTok and said, like, stitch this with a welcome to our first round pick. And like, he might stitch you back. And we did that with Zach. And like, he did a little stitch with this kid who was like so hyped that we had picked him. And so like, that's entertaining and connecting with the fan base. And I feel like being a part of the fan base is really important to us. And, we're never going to be 100% the fan, just like we're never going to be 100% the Jets and like this organization that maybe just posts and then walks away, right? Like we want to be a part of this fan base that is, dying of thirst for us to be successful. And, it's hard for us to be self-aware at all times. Like we can't always be that, especially when things, get really, really tough, but we want everyone to feel like, everyone that is a Jets fan, that that we care about them and we hear them, and that we're just like you. Like we want this thing to turn around too, right? And like we're really excited about these guys, like where this thing's headed, and what Joe Douglas is doing as the GM and what Robert Saleh is doing as the head coach. So making them feel like we're part of that while also entertaining them is so important to us, because I really feel like doing informative things is it's by the wayside for what social is. People are on social for information, but like they're going to go get it from people that are meant to inform. And I don't necessarily think that teams are meant to do that anymore. I think we're meant to entertain.
Oh man, I just want to clip that last answer and listen to it over and over again. There's so much good stuff in there, man. A few minutes left here with Perry Mattern, social media manager for the New York Jets. Perry, I don't know how we're going to get through everything I want to get through, but we're going to try. You brought up TikTok, and I think to kind of like what you were alluding to earlier, TikTok, doesn't really matter how as much with your wins and losses. Heck, it may not even matter if the people viewing your content know you're a football team at times. It's a place that truly is a unique platform. Let's start to emanate elsewhere, of course, but just tell me about how the Jets look at TikTok and what you guys have found as successful, not successful, and ultimately what you guys want to get out of the platform, especially given that a lot of those views may come from people that, again, don't know you're a football team, or at least don't live anywhere near New York or perhaps even the United States.
Yeah, it's man, it's hard. It's been the most challenging platform I've ever dealt with, and certainly the first one that's ever truly made me feel old. It just being 29, but I think it's kind of unpredictable at times. I think we've seen a lot of mic'd up stuff has worked really well there, and those are kind of easy wins. And being on trend, I think, is important, but it doesn't, if you can't be on trend organically, and if you feel like you're forcing stuff, like that audience is going to sniff that out from a mile away, like that you're forcing something and that, you don't actually get what's going on, right? Like it's very much like, if kind of platform, like people just aren't going to be interested. So, it can be kind of tough at times to find your voice. And there's some other teams in our league, I mentioned the Lions already, that do such a great job, and the Bills have done an incredible job on there as well. I think we're kind of still in search for it. I'm not going to sit here and say we've got everything figured out on there, because we don't. And it's continually trying to. You feel like you're still playing a game of throwing stuff at a wall a little bit, right? And it's crazy that it's been around for almost 2 years now, or excuse me, almost 3 years now. and you're still like throwing stuff at a wall, right? Because there was things that worked in 2019 that don't work now, right? We put up, I remember we had 4 million views on a video of Le'Veon Bell at his press conference with his little girl, right? I'm not saying that wouldn't work now, but maybe it wouldn't. And we've had things. It's so funny because every time you think you probably don't. Like you publish something and you're like, yeah, that one's probably going to go pretty good, and then it's like, dang, it didn't do anything. And then next thing you know, you're putting up one that you're like, oh, I like this, but maybe it might not go viral or anything like that. Next thing you know, it has hundreds of thousands of views, and you're like, man, I don't know how that happened. But I do think that the teams that have really found their voice on there and really found and the point you made was a really good one, where you almost forget that it's an NFL team is really, really important. And I'm really excited to see what we can do on there, because the one part of it that I really like and I think works well is just highlighting the personalities that we have here. And man, we have brought in some awesome personalities, especially in our draft last year, and I'm sure we'll do the same this year. So it just showing these guys in situations that isn't really football, I think is really, really good. I think people want to see what these people are like, and what they're interested in that isn't football, and things that, maybe you couldn't find elsewhere on regular TV or regular, even other social for that matter. So it's it's a challenge. There's no doubt about it. But, we can't, certainly there's a lot of parts of TikTok. There's lots of areas of TikToks that we can't, dive into as just from like maybe an explicit point of view. But, there's still so many ways to engage the fan base and the future fan base there.
When something does go viral on TikTok, or even if you just consider the type of content, even if it's just like whatever, 20 seconds of mic'd up gold, what can you take away from that beyond the platform, beyond, certainly the engagement on that platform and follower growth? Like, can you say, hey, okay, how can we get this incredible moment between Le'Veon Bell and his daughter? How can we get this to our season ticket holders who may not even heard of TikTok, or at least would be scared if they're older? Or, hey, like this content surprisingly did really well on TikTok. Like, how can we use the lesson of that, or even use the substance of that on other platforms where we can reach different fans potentially? Or is it really just so self-contained on TikTok that it's hard to really replicate that anything else, whether it's insights or the content itself?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's a really good question, because I do think that there is a certain level of self-containment to it, to TikTok, and I do think there's certainly things there that are successful that I don't think would be successful elsewhere. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it is one of those things where like sometimes less is more, and it can be like that on the other social platforms too. I mean, a mic'd up moment is that, right? It's pretty easy to see if that mic'd up moment is going to be something that people are going to want to see. Because if it's a cool conversation on the field, like it's gonna do really well. Like there's no matter where that is. But I think that's a great question, and I don't think I really have a great answer for you either. But I think it is something that we've started to. I don't think it is. It is something we've started discussing here, where it's like, okay, so what are we seeing that works on TikTok, and how does that relate to us building a younger fan base that is offline and in person, right? How do we connect the experiential aspect of a football game or maybe the other way around, like, connecting a TikTok, or, showing what is happening here with us as a team, and, what is happening at MetLife Stadium, and then, connecting that person that takes that in there and then bringing them to the stadium. How could we help to be part of the bottom line as part of the social team?
No, it really is such a fascinating conversation that you and I could geek out about forever. I mean, there's so many things there that so many times I'm on TikTok myself and I'm watching a video that just makes me so delighted. I'm like, how can anyone not love this? Like, it's definitely one of those things that just exudes joy, and you're not quite sure why, but it's that essence that if you can take that and port it across every fan touch point or every fan social platform, like there's something there. It's definitely interesting.
Yeah, it's and that's the one thing I think about it a lot too. I'm not sure if others do, but is we are touching, we really would like to touch so many different kinds of fans too, of ages and races and in cultures. And so, especially being in the market that we're in. So, that's why I think for us, it's even more important than ever to have, content that is developed differently for each platform. And whether that means, it's maybe more traditional and on platforms that have been around longer versus the TikToks and the Snapchats of the world. But it can be something that is interesting to a 16-year-old from Long Island will be so different than something that a 55-year-old from North Jersey would be interested in. Like it's kind of crazy, right? And being able to cover all those bases, is really tough. And we definitely think about it on a daily basis, while all thinking about how do we bring this back to being excited about the New York Jets and wanting to see the New York Jets.
And you guys have a not a completely unique challenge, but a fairly unique challenge in that you're not just competing for. I mean, yes, NFL is very much a national, international sport nowadays. I mean, you guys have access to the UK, of course, among other places. But I'm speaking in particular about trying to win over those fans that maybe generational fans or maybe new fans that want to gravitate to you. Like, how do the Jets want to be known? How do you think about yourselves, like going against the Giants in particular in the same market, the same, at least home fans? And I think even going back like decades ago, back to, the Joe Namath guarantee, the Jets have kind of been brought up as this, challenger brand, and the Giants are kind of the blue blood or whatever, the established one. So how do you guys use that? How do you guys see yourselves? How do you want your fans to see you? And how does that manifest in your strategy?
Yeah, I think the challenger brand thing is really interesting. And I think there's maybe a little bit of in that, but I think also we kind of have to work with the hand that we're dealt a little bit, which is right now on March of 2022, right? We are a team that, we're preaching that we're on the rise, right? And that's, and I'm not, that's not a lie. Like I actually believe in, what we have here in a third-year general manager, a second-year coach. There's really a really cool culture being built here, and we have a lot of young players that are really exciting, and that we have a future here that is being carved out. And so I think that falls into it. And look, there's no way around it. Like we have the longest playoff drought in the league, and it's pretty substantial. I guess we're at like 11 or 12 years now that we have not been in the playoffs, and I don't think anyone else is longer than like 4 or 5. So it's one thing that I didn't really realize maybe till about like halfway in my time here, maybe in like 2020, where you realize, we haven't been in the playoffs for most of the time, the social era, right? We haven't been there, right? We were in the AFC Championship in 2010. And I know Twitter existed at that point, but people weren't using it like they
right.
were 5 years later, and now 12 years later, right? And Instagram was barely born, and Facebook was certainly was the behemoth at that point. But so there is, we're I wouldn't say we're going uphill here either, because we do have a pretty incredible fan base. I mean, it's really cool to see, considering what they have been through with us, with our struggles on the field. They really have never left our side, and they're back every year. And obviously they get frustrated and disappointed and all those kinds of things, but like, we know that they're there, because if we started to win, there's no doubt that MetLife would be full and be rocking. But I think for us right now, we're thinking about what are the best ways that we can make you excited about this team, about where we're going on the field, and then B, how can we make you excited about the personalities around this team, like the people that are coming, that are being brought in here, are also really good people too. And that is an important part, I think, of what we do as an organization. And then social is there to kind of be the megaphone to that, that we can show that Zach Wilson, Elijah Moore, Elijah Vera Tucker, Michael Carter, like these guys are really exciting on the field, but they're also like really cool people too. And I think that's all been brought under what we have been doing as a team. I think we, look, being in a market with another team is always, you're always going to be compared to them. But I think, for us to stick out beyond the Giants too, and all of the New York area teams, there's a lot to compete with here, and beyond sports too. We have to be a team that is, relatable and sticks out and feels like they are New York. And that's it's a lot to learn and a lot to to encompass. But I think the best way to do it is to feel like you're part of the fan base, and then on top of that, just amplifying the pieces that you have here.
Is it getting harder these days to stand out on social, to be known, whether it's be known for something, or at least to have something? If I am a new fan in London and I'm trying to pick my team, and social is my primary touch point, like what do you want to be the reason that they pick the Jets?
Yeah, to answer your first question, there's no doubt that it's becoming harder. I mean, it's certainly a diluted place, and there's just so much happening on these apps, and obviously, kind of their algorithms are changing on a daily basis too. So you're kind of always kind of fighting against that as well. But I do think that, when you don't have the cheat code of going to the playoffs year after year, or having superstars that are in the Pro Bowl or all pros, or going to the Super Bowl, you got to find ways to stand out. But the thing about that is that I don't ever want to, and my bosses would feel the same way about this, is that this organization we're not going to go out and just, and try to seek attention for attention's sake, right? Like I'm not a very big believer in all engagement is good engagement. Like I don't think that is actually I don't subscribe to that. So, we are very much we like our voice, and we want to kind of extend that voice, and we want to feel like we're part of the internet culture. Like one other thing that I think about too is like there's probably a large part of our fan base that is not really that online. And it's not our job to necessarily connect to those people that aren't that online. We want to connect with the people that are online. So we need to speak to that community, and we need to speak to that Twitter community, like how they are online. But then you also need to speak to how people are online on TikTok, and how people are online on Snapchat and Instagram. So like there's different ways that you're interacting with those communities that I think is really important. Like we're not talking to the whole fan base. I know that. Like I know we have 1.2 million Twitter followers. There's more Jet fans than that. But then to answer your last question, like if someone was in the UK or in Alabama for like that is interested in becoming a Jets fan, I want them to come here and feel like, wait, actually that account is a Jets fan account almost, right? They really love the team, right? They're not just passing along information. Like they're fun, they're exciting, and they're relatable. Like those are kind of the big things we've been working on here since like early last year, when we there's no doubt we hit a little bit of a rock bottom, right? We fired our head coach, we traded our quarterback, and we coming off a 2-win season, and we kind of looked at each other in the eye and we said, hey, we can't hide from our own shadow. Like, yeah, this is tough, but we have a chance to really push this thing in the right direction. We're hiring a new coach, and certainly we were blessed to have Coach Sala be the guy, because he's about as exciting as it gets. And then you draft Zach and you draft all these other young players. Like, all right, so let's ride, and let's not, we're not stopping the horse no matter what happens. We're going to keep pushing through, and we're going to be big fans of this team. And like, that doesn't mean we're going to, if we're down 35-0 and score a touchdown, that we're going to, go nuts on Twitter. But at the same time, I want it to feel like we really care about this team just as much as you do. If you were going to be a fan, like I want to care about it as much as you care about it. And we care about this team as much as the 50-year season ticket holder does, just as much as the first year person does too. So I think it's kind of a passion thing. And just like I do think about that thing a lot that I mentioned earlier, where we got a balance between being the Jets, and then also being part of the Jets fan base. And the more that we can straddle that line and kind of be in those areas, I think the better we'll be.
Oh, it's just so great, man. Cause you're not the Jets at Jets Twitter or whatever is, like, to your point, not speaking to the whole fan base, and your goal is like the Twitter followers are not necessarily going to fall in love with rooting for laundry. They're going to fall in love with wanting to be your friend and wanting to be at Jets Twitter's friend and support what at Jets Twitter is all about, which is the Jets on the field. and be that friend that you're high-fiving at the sports bar when the Jets score a touchdown. Like, you want them to high-five with at Jets. Like, that's just, I love that.
Yep. No doubt about it. That's actually a great way to put it, because it's like, I want it to be like, if I do this with the teams that I'm fans of, that I grew up being fans of, like, when something great happens, I want them to go look at what we posted and share it. Like, that be their thought. Like, oh, I wonder what the Jets posted when this happened, kind of thing. Right. Like that's the ultimate, like, kind of like fist bump or high five that we can get. The virtual fist bump high five is like, oh, I wonder what they did about this, that kind of thing.
Oh, man, that's awesome. Perry, we didn't get to everything, but we're going to have more fun with you in our JETS Jet segment. But first episode, Shareable Stat, coming up right now. Just fantastic being able to pick the brain of Perry Mattern, social media manager for the New York Jets. Again, I promised you it was going to be awesome, and he certainly was. We're going to have more fun, though, coming up with our quick-hitting questions. But first, this episode's Shareable Stat. This episode's Shareable Stat comes from the much-renowned Piper Sandler survey of teens in the U.S. They did their semi-annual Gen Z survey. Over 7,000 U.S. teens were asked a lot of questions about brands, about social media behavior. And the Shareable Stat we're going to throw at you today, which you may have seen, is that TikTok has officially surpassed Snapchat as U.S. teens' favorite social media platform. It's still a pretty close race. Instagram comes at number 3, in case you were curious or couldn't guess that already. But they are losing share at the number 3 spot. But the Shareable Stat we're gonna have you listen to today is that TikTok now is the favorite social media platform of U.S. teens by 33%. 33% of them compared to 31% for Snapchat. So what does that mean? Well, Snapchat is still obviously a very big player, especially when it comes to messaging friends, private messaging. Maybe a little bit of stories, but if users are trying to get in touch with their friends, they are using certainly still Messenger and other iMessage as well. But Snapchat is the way to go. TikTok, they are using it almost probably like a YouTube, or where they're just spending all the time on there, just like all of us have, to be honest. And it's a lot of opportunity to be creative, to find community a little bit, to post some stuff yourself, and try to get throw your hat in the ring, so to speak. But what does it really mean for those of you listening to this podcast today? It's that as Perry mentioned, even that TikTok is not going away. That's for damn sure. And it's not easy. We've had a lot of guests on the podcast talk about how they've approached TikTok, and really the best piece of advice that I keep hearing is that you really have to have someone dedicated to it. It's a lot to ask, certainly, and not necessarily spending 24/7 on there, but you do need to spend a large chunk of your time on there, both looking for the trends, following along with what is taking off, what's popular, some of the new effects that come in, some of the new features, and certainly how it's spending the time to create that quality content as well. The stuff that does well on TikTok is, especially when it's originally created, is not a 5-minute thing. It's very difficult, and certainly as Perry mentioned, the NFL has some good stuff that you can throw in there, whether it's the mic'd up content or quick hitters from press conferences, but it's also changing. You don't know where it's going, but it's an opportunity to reach, obviously, the U.S. teens, among others, as you cultivate a fan base that is young and up and coming. So, again, this episode Shareable Stat, the favored by 33%, the most popular platform for U.S. teens, according to the semi-annual Piper Sandler survey, is TikTok at 33%, officially surpassing Snapchat with 31%. So, think about it, ponder it, talk about it. But stick around, because you're going to love the rest of my conversation with Perry Mattern of the New York Jets. Back from this episode, Shareable Stat, and I am joined once again by Perry Mattern. He is the social media manager for the New York Jets. Perry, you did awesome, ran it all the way back on your interview. Are you now ready for a little JETS?
Let's do it.
All right, number one, you mentioned going to Shippensburg University. Tell me what's like the best fun fact you got, or what is the university known for?
So I will keep it to actually a football related thing. So we actually have 2 Pro Bowlers, and they actually played at the same time. That was fullback John Kuhn, who played for the Packers quite a bit, and then cornerback Brent Grimes, who played Miami, Atlanta, and maybe one other stop in his career. But there was a time there in like the mid 2010s, maybe early 2010s, that we had more Pro Bowlers than a lot of D1 programs. We have not had one guy. We haven't had a guy get back to the NFL since, but we did have those 2 guys in the NFL at the same time, which was, I don't think any other D2 school could have said that at the time. But yeah, those are our guys.
Good. Those guys, I don't know if you saw them play in person or even on TV when they were there. Were they just clearly better than the rest of the D2 competition, or like were they just really, really good and it's just good competition down there?
No, they definitely were like very, very good. Now Grimes was like with defensive backs, obviously it's maybe a little bit harder to like rack up the stats, but he had a decent amount of picks. But Kuhn had all the rushing records at Shippensburg, and then he just bulked up a little bit more and became a fullback when he got into the league. But he definitely was like he was not. It wasn't like he was just some running back in the Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference. He was a baller.
Number 2 for you, Perry. I'm going to throw you a curveball here. Hope you're ready for it. We can keep this brief, though. Sam Darnold out indefinitely. I say that. We all picture the meme in our head. Sam Darnold out indefinitely. Everyone picture the meme right now. Tell me what that was like from your end, from your perspective. How did that play out? What do people internally think about it? What was the moment like when you realized this shit's taken off? Take me through that.
Yeah, it's funny because one thing about like when you're at the game and like we cut from the broadcast, like cut clips from the broadcast, but sometimes like maybe you don't notice things from the broadcast like as they happen. So like I didn't see it on the broadcast, and then like you just kind of started to see it more and more, and like that was not a good night for us. We lost to Cleveland. I think we got beat pretty badly by Cleveland, and because our backup was Trevor Siemian, he broke his leg in the first quarter. So then we had our third stringer out there, and it was just bad. But like. It's funny because like in a longer conversation earlier, we talked about kind of the evolution of our voice and like leaning into ourselves and things of that nature. And like, we weren't there yet. At that time we weren't there yet. Also, we were a little shell shocked. It's freaking week 2 and our quarterback just got mono. You're just like, there's not a whole lot you can do with it at that point. Like you're down 25, and we ended up when he came back and beat Dallas, we ended up using it. And I think I don't remember what we put on the graphic. Like we changed the words on it about him being like a baller or something because he threw for like 330 and we beat Dallas in his first game back. So like it was we ended up getting back into it, but like at the moment, honestly, it's a lot of just sit there and just take it on the chin. And sometimes that's going to happen.
Was there like that time where you're like, okay, this is not going away. This thing has a life of its own.
Yeah. And that was where I was like, look, we're just put it over there. We're going to use it later. I don't know when we're going to use it, but we're going to use it. And then you end up saying that and like a bunch of that stuff dies in the social media graveyard. Right. Like, but I was like, there's going to be a time we're going to be able to use that. Like, so like, but as it was happening, it was just like, it was, I mean, it's crazy that he had 2 of those moments that year because that was one, but the Ghost game was honestly even crazier because that was just totally nuts from the perspective of like, I can't believe ESPN aired that. Like, it was just like, it was so nuts, but like, that one was even crazy. And that game was like even worse for us. I mean, I think we lost that game 33-0. So like and that's truly a position where you can do absolutely nothing. Like you just lost 33-0. What can you do with that stuff? So it's sometimes you just kind of sit there and you just sit back and laugh at how ridiculous a season can get. And the 2019 year was definitely one of those years, no doubt about it.
Oh yeah, at least this is what we're doing. We're looking back and laughing now.
That's right.
Number 3, this one I'm interested in. Tell me the most important social media and sports sort of lesson or guiding principle you picked up so far in your career.
Yeah, I wrote down a couple for this. I actually like struggled, and I looked at Kylie, who's on my team. I said, like, what is something I've given to you? And then she kind of actually helped roll the ball for me a little bit. And I think the prepare for the unprepared thing was really important. Now, I've never really worked in social outside of sports, and I find it so fascinating for people that work on brands that like post maybe like 5 to 10 times a week. Like I find that fascinating because I'm just like, what must that be like? Because in sports, I don't really necessarily know how it happened, but we all just, I guess, decided when this started that we were all just going to post like dozens of times a week, and it was just going to be normal that we did that. But we came to the consensus where like that's why we talk about prepare for the unprepared by making sure you have everything ready that you can be prepared for, and then just start thinking about things that could happen. And that's what's awesome about sports is when the game starts, you have no clue what's going to happen. So like, what could we be ready for if we score on the first possession? What could we be ready for if we're up 35-0 in the third quarter? What can we be ready for if we win at the buzzer? Like all those kinds of things is a lot of fun, and I think that's also the best way that you can get engagement while also like touching or like like making sure that you have everything done that you need to have done, right? Like that all the sponsored things that you need to make sure that you're delivering on it at the best possible quality. Like by having all that prepared, then you're now going to more likely be prepared for the unprepared. And then the other thing, and this is also kind of a social and sports thing, is always be ready to win. And I know I said that kind of at the end of the interview, but like you can't be ready to, you can't think like, if we're double digit underdogs in a game like that, we can't be ready for what's going to happen if we win that game. We had two of those games this year. We went into week 4 against Tennessee, and I don't think many people gave us a chance. We were 0-3, and lo and behold, we win in overtime, and we had stuff ready. And then the same thing with Cincinnati when, Zach went out with the injury and Mike White started his first career game, and the guy threw for 400 yards. And it's like, that's prepare for the unprepared, because then when you do, you get the accolades for it, because that's another one I'll never forget. And I won't even say we were prepared for it, but one of our team photographers, shout out Sarah Snyder, if she listens to the show. So she was editing photos in the press box that day. And she said, hey, it was like in the middle of the fourth quarter, and was like, oh my gosh, we might actually do this. And she says, we have that photo of Mike White pointing to ice in his veins from camp. Like one random day, he just like walked out and did the ice in his veins.
Yeah.
Like it was like kind of goofy. And we were like, well, yeah, we're going to tweet that if we win. And we did. And, we posted it everywhere, and it was awesome.
Amazing. Oh, that's fantastic. You're spot on there. Like, yeah, you can't get dealt winning cards every single time. You're not going to win every game, but when you get those pocket aces, like, be ready to play that. Be ready to maximize that pot. That's my favorite analogy.
I love it.
Number 4. Tell me the Jets player so far, whether he's current or former. It's been the most fun when it comes to creating content, or you can always count on him to have some fun on camera.
Yeah, it hasn't been very close. Running back Michael Carter, we drafted him last year. He's been somewhat of a godsend for what we've been doing. He's been awesome. He hams it up. He just has a legitimately good personality, and he's a legitimately good person too, which is kind of the trifecta.
That's awesome. That's good to know. Go Heels, I think, right? Is he?
That's right. That's exactly right. Yep.
Number 5. Tell me the pro sports team whose social media you admire and why, except for the Jets in Washington. Yeah,
I wrote 3 down, and I think if I had to pick one, I'd probably pick the Carolina Hurricanes. I'm sure that's a popular answer on this pod. They just do an incredible job. They just hit every beat just right. They have such a good feel for what they're doing, and they connect with their fan base so well. And you just look from a statistical angle of them compared to other NHL teams. They just kill it. But on top of that, it just feels right. And I think one of the hardest things for us to do is when we take advantage of those like times to, they've taken their shots at other teams, right? But it's never felt like ridiculous, right? Like it's never felt like out of place, right? But then also when you talk about like what they've done with pride and things of that nature, they just nail it every time. But got to shout out the Chargers. I know everyone's big fans of the Chargers, but they deserve it. They stick to the brand. They're consistently copies and outstanding. Creativity is outstanding. And then one that I've actually really liked, and this is kind of a team that I liked looking at, because looking at a team that maybe hasn't had much success on the field, is the Detroit Tigers. I thought they've done a really nice job, especially a team that has not had a lot of success on the field the last few years. They've been really, really good.
I like those. I tell you, the more you are, and the more your team knows your brand and knows your strategy, the better you're able to execute in those real-time moments. I mean, yes, a lot more goes into it. The Canes do a great job operations-wise. The Chargers do a great job operations-wise as well. But when you know who you are, like that empowers you a little bit more to know what we're supposed to do right now.
That's exactly what you can tell. The Hurricanes have that to a T, because they know themselves so well, and they know the fan base so well, and they just don't miss. It's not like, the one thing about the Chargers is, they don't miss from like a meme perspective, and they're always just like, it's crazy. The internet culture is about as good as it gets for the Chargers, but like, I think the Hurricanes just nail it from both of those perspectives, from the traditional like things you see on social, mixed with community management, mixed with internet culture. It's really good.
Shout out to Mike and Dan there for sure.
Yeah, Dan's. I should shout out Dan because we actually had a long conversation after last season, not this past season, but the season before ended. And I said that we had kind of hit a kind of a end of the road there with us turning, firing a coach and trading a quarterback, and he was really helpful. He was the perfect sounding board for what I needed. And I knew I needed to talk to someone that had done it for a longer time. And Dan's, a New York guy himself. So even though he's a Giants fan, we'll give him a pass for that. But, he gets what this is like. Like he gets what, he needs to be done from the social perspective, but then also he gets this area, he gets this fan base. And he was so helpful to me. I can't say enough good things about Dan.
Oh yeah. Definitely shout out to him. Number 6, this is gonna be a fun one for you, Perry, as we come down the wire here. Your time with the Harrisburg Sanders, everyone knows that minor league teams have the most fun when it comes to game night promotions or giveaways or whatever it might be. So tell me, what's the one that sticks out from your time with Harrisburg? What's that crazy, wacky promotion or giveaway that is just like the one that's stuck in your mind forever?
Easily the Cowboy Monkey Rodeo. That is little monkeys in cowboy hats riding dogs in the outfield in between innings. It truly is a sight to behold. I mean, oh my gosh, the amount of tickets we would sell on those nights was just crazy. It's as good as advertised. It is so good.
Oh my goodness. Oh geez. Talk about stuff that would perform well on TikTok. Monkey Rodeo. Hell yeah.
I might go find out, see if they are on TikTok, because that's content waiting to happen.
I mean, I know the here's your monkey content guy comes in my feed every now and then on TikTok. So yes. Monkeys on TikTok for sure. Number 7, everyone is kind of keeping their eye on NFTs, Web3. Obviously, there's NFL All Day with Dapper Labs, the kind of their version of NBA Top Shot. So just tell me from a high level view, what have conversations or collaborations looked like for the Jets or at a higher level with NFL teams? Kind of what do you see going on there and what's ahead?
Yeah, I don't want to give too much away. I was actually thinking about this. I don't know how much of this is confidential and is not. I think it's obvious that things are coming for every team. We did dabble in it a little bit late in the season. Everyone that purchased a ticket and then actually had their ticket scanned and came into the game against Tampa Bay in our week 17 game, that ticket became an NFT. And then we also gave one away on social earlier that week too. That was like more of just a random giveaway one. So I think everyone here, that's been a large part of the marketing departments here. Shout out Tim Kemp, who's really spearheaded that for us here, about how we can be successful in this space. And I think it's coming where there's going to be every team is probably going to be in there pretty soon is what I would say without giving too much away.
Yeah, it's obviously a fascinating space to watch. Interesting to hear what you guys have done already. And all I want to know is if and when there's a digital MetLife Stadium built, like, is there going to be 2 versions then? And like,
that's a good question.
Number 8 for you, Perry. We always got to ask a food question. So tell me, if I come out there and visit you in NYC, or if we go hang out in your old haunts around Philly, for both places, tell me the best meal to get and where we're getting it.
So in New York, I'm a pretty there's still so many places on the list that I want to hit, but I would say, like, if I'm like, to keep it simple and also we're not going to spend too much money, we're going to Los Tacos number 1. That is the best taco I've ever had, and that is there's one in like near Times Square, and then there's one down in the Chelsea Market, and I think there's one a little further down, like lower in Manhattan. I'm not sure if it's like East Village-ish, but I haven't been to that one. But like, cannot beat the tacos, the best I've had in New York. And then in Philly, I'm not actually as good on Philly as you would think I am, considering I didn't grow up too far away from there, but a couple summers ago, I was there with some friends, and we hit up a BYOB Italian place called Giorgio's that I thought was really, really good. So those are my 2 spots.
All right, I like it. It sounds good to me, man. Let's do it. Number 9, alluded to this a little bit earlier, but the Jets were among the teams that were awarded rights to market in the United Kingdom, as the NFL kind of gave out those licenses, for lack of a better term, earlier this year or late last year. So tell me, what does that mean for you guys?
Yeah. So what I think it means for us is that it kind of gives us the ability to activate with those fans, both virtually and in person in ways that, we wouldn't be able to prior, or that, the other 26 teams that are not there cannot do. So a lot of that has to do, I think, with sponsorship and marketing and things of those nature, things of that nature. We didn't have the IHMA rights when we launched our UK Twitter account last October, but we kind of knew that we were headed in that direction. So we launched the UK Twitter and started, trying to build up a fan base and ahead of, getting those rights. So it doesn't really mean much from a football perspective. I think a lot of people kind of saw that. And that was the one, that was a really, really a tough kind of social strategy that we had to develop, and in kind of like a case study, was that we just really wanted people to know that it wasn't affecting football itself, and we weren't going. Also, that too, we aren't selling the team, we're not playing there every year. Like I don't. I mean, I guess it's possible that we would play there again this year, but I don't know. But like that was the biggest thing, just making our fans here know that this is just about expanding our fan base over there, not about us going there, taking the team there. So it's probably not as big of a deal as it sounds, but it's really cool and exciting. I was lucky enough to be on the London trip last year when we played Atlanta at Tottenham, and it's really cool, and that we have a legitimate fan base there too. And being sister cities with London, I think there's a really cool opportunity for us to expand our fan base, and hopefully as this team itself starts really start to gear up and start to win more, that we're going to be able to engage that fan base and make them part of our own, even if they're across the pond.
Oh yeah, no, that's a really interesting point you made there too, around like we got to make sure that the fans don't misinterpret what this means, that we're not the UK Jets, we're not moving there, playing half our games there. That's really interesting to hear about that. And I do recall when I was checking out some of the like announcements of this is the market, this is our market now, or this is our introduction to the UK, whatever it may be, that the Jets did a hell of a job on social with their content to sort of welcome UK fans. So shout out to you and everyone else that was part of that, for sure.
I appreciate that. We did do a lot. I think we ended up doing more than like every other team. We were kind of surprised when more teams didn't. The other teams didn't do as much as we did, but we're really excited about it. Like we're going all in on it, so it's going to be cool.
Last one for you here to get you out on. Tell me the breakout player for the Jets this year, the one who should we be looking out for?
I feel like this is probably pretty obvious for people that actually follow football, but I'm going to go with Elijah Moore. There's not too many guys that when like you walk on the field for the first day of training camp, like you're like, oh, okay, I see it already. Like he's a guy. Like he's a guy. And he had some struggles with injuries. I think he ended up missing like 6 games this year. Would have been over 1,000 yards if he played all 6 games or played all 17 games. And he's a dude and a good kid. Like he has a really good head on his shoulders. Turns 22 actually this Sunday, and he's going to be really, really good. I'm excited to watch him play.
That's a great call for sure. I remember reading about how good he was in interviews and how like mature he came off, and there's stories going back to his time in college, of course, but a talented player both on and off the field, which is great to hear.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He's what is his trying to think of E_Moore03. He's a big social guy too. We love big social players too.
Perfect segue into this next segment, which is yours to take over. Tell us your social media all-star follow. You already mentioned Elijah Moore, but tell us someone else. Just tell us who they are, what platform you want to shout them out on, and why they're worth following.
Yeah, this one was, man, I was like really thinking about this one, but I think Dave Jorgensen, who runs TikTok for the Washington Post, man, he's awesome, and I know he has the book out now. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I've just never been so impressed with someone's creativity, and especially on a daily basis too. Like the creativity that he has on a daily basis is just incredible, and he's a really good Twitter follow to begin with. But then, like, obviously, go follow the Washington Post TikTok, and you're going to see it's just. I don't think I've seen a better TikTok account in terms, especially like a high level brand that has to, I kind of mentioned this earlier when I was talking about the Jets and TikTok. Like, as a Washington Post, you can't be posting things that are like out of pocket, right? Like, you have to still fall under some. It's very easy to be super popular on TikTok with using like inappropriate language or like super like inappropriate jokes and stuff. Yeah, but like the guy is legitimately funny, and he also is able to tie it back to what the Washington Post is, which is a very reputable news source, and it is a perfect marriage of brand, what the brand is already and what it has been for, I don't know how long the Washington Post has been around, hundreds of years, and what TikTok is. He's about as good as it gets.
That is a phenomenal one for sure. I mean, when history looks back on the rise of TikTok, he's part of it. Like he's in that early chapters that he helped.
Yeah, right.
That we do.
That's a great point too, because like he was doing this before everyone else was too. Like he was good at this before everyone else was good at this. Like he really was on it from the start. And yeah, that guy deserves a lot of credit. I hope the Washington Post is taking care of him.
Totally. All right, Perry. How about you? Where can we find you as well as all things Jets across digital social media?
Yeah, go follow at NY Jets. They pay my bills. So we're at NY Jets. We're at NY Jets on everything. I think on Facebook, technically we're facebook.com/Jets, but other than that, we're at NY Jets everywhere. And then you can follow me at pmattern7. I'm on Twitter, Instagram. I'm trying to get better at checking my LinkedIn connections, but yeah, those are my main ones.
Check him out, and of course, follow all things Jets. They are a team on the rise with a lot of great talent, both on and off the field, and they do a great job on social. And Perry is a big reason why, and cannot thank him enough for coming on the podcast today. And you were fantastic. So my gratitude and thank you so much, Perry.
Neil, I appreciate the kind words, and thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Thank you so much again to Perry Mattern, social media manager for the New York Jets. Cannot thank him enough for giving us his time, his knowledge, his wisdom, his insight. Just, again, full of good stuff. I learned a lot. I hope you did too. I'm sure you did. And cannot thank him enough for coming on the podcast today. And we look forward to cheering on the Jets as they kick off the 2023 season later this year. Not to date this podcast, but hopefully the Jets have a great year and an improved year. And Perry is a big part of it. Tweeting along, posting on Instagram, posting on social along the way as they cheer on alongside the fans. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. As always, I'm your host, Neil Horowitz. Hit me up on LinkedIn. You can connect with me there. I also post more content there. Visit the website, dsmsports.net, for more episodes of content. On Twitter, NJH287. And, of course, subscribe to the podcast on whichever podcast platform you like. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz signing off from the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.